on. All right, welcome everyone to Omaha Data Science Academy, the Data Foundations and Business Intelligence track. This is SQL 101 for, this is the spring 2025 version, which will run from March 10th to April 4th of 2025. I am Jeremy Bergman, your instructor for the class. I have contact information by phone and by email. I'd say you could get a hold of me either by text message. I'm not always around my phone with other work that I do, but I could get back to you with a text message. Email works all right. That'd be something where I check it a few times a day. But Slack is probably the best way to contact me. I have it on my phone. It'll bring up a message, just like a text message. And I could respond to you if I'm in the middle of something else doing other work. I could quickly let you know when I could get back to you for a question. But definitely, I feel like that's the best way to share code and thoughts in this class. And then, like I said before I started the stream, we'll hand in homework that way. You can direct message me any homework or anything that you want to see. Or if you want to just ask a general question about SQL, you drop that in the channel for all of your classmates to be able to see. Maybe it answers the question for a bunch of people. Plus, I'll use it for any type of outbound communication. If for some reason we have a blizzard and hardly anybody can make it, or everybody comes up with the flu, hopefully that doesn't happen, or whatever could happen, I'll just communicate through that. And then I always drop course content in there and connect you to videos and everything after the lecture is complete. Okay. So the course objective, this class will teach a student how to use SQL programming language to query, access, store, clean, and design structured data sets within a relational database environment. So this class has traditionally been called data manipulation and management. So management of data is a big part of it. Like, how do you collect it and how do you store it and update it and clean it and so forth. And manipulations like the SQL programming language. It's like being able to do things like selecting data or creating calculations on data. Well, you can update and delete things through the SQL programming language too. So it's been traditionally called that, like, how do you manage data within a relational database environment and a structured data environment using a SQL programming language. We've gone to SQL 101 now that we have, like, Data Science Academy has created like clear tracks for certificates. We call it SQL 101 now, but I also like the title Data Manipulation and Management in it. What's that? Yeah. Yep. And oftentimes I'll use both in the class and management. I call that DMM. Okay. So that's the objective, is to teach you how to be able to navigate it, relational database, to be able to manipulate and manage data using the SQL programming language. So what does the course cover? It covers SQL programming. That'll be primarily just your first 3 classes. Tonight's more about getting set up, and your next 2 is just learning the SQL programming language and what you can do with it on existing data. Then you'll get into more advanced topics like data cleaning and transforming, extracting and loading data, some advanced database functions near the end of the class, and relational database modeling and design. So that last part is once you learn about relational data or relational databases and you've really navigated it with SQL, then we'll say, how could you design a database, or how can you structure this database to store the data you need from either a system or for analysis or analytical reasons. All of it using MySql server. All right, so the goal is to provide students with SQL programming language and relational database skills to manipulate data within business intelligence projects and data science projects. I always like to say it's a success if you've learned the skills and you're able to directly apply that on the job at the business. Or on projects that you work on within a business. So I try to guide you towards like practical use of the SQL programming language in a business environment. So those type of skills that employers are looking for. Right. So these skills include using the language to obtain data, aggregate data, so like summing or averaging data, and then joining data together. So I always think of it as Excel spreadsheets. If you worked in Excel, the different tabs, relational databases are very similar. They're in a tabular structure, and joins would be bringing those two tabs in Excel together where they match, or potentially where they don't match. But using the SQL programming language can be much more efficient doing that, especially if you already have it in a database. All right. So it'd be used for combining disparate data sets for analysis, which you can do by joins. We'll learn that about the 4th or 5th lecture in this class. Performing standard data extraction, cleaning and transformation and loading. We'll do that. We'll learn about all of that in one lecture. So that's a lot of managing it. So taking data out of systems or a spreadsheet, cleaning it, and transforming it and loading it into a relational database. So we'll also store and manage data. It all goes together with that. Basic theory and some application behind relational database design, and familiarity with advanced database functionality. So some of these are, you could create your own functions or create some repeatable processes. We'll learn that as the last lecture. I've recently been including that in this class as it's useful for when you go onto the job and you want to do things. You want to either create your own functions or you want some repeatable process that you can do over and over without having to write the same code. Okay. So that's the goal. You learn quite a bit in this class, and I think it's fairly comprehensive of SQL 101 class. We fit quite a bit into 4 weeks. So at any time, if you have questions or you get stuck or feel like you're falling behind, please reach out to me and I'll help you out. Especially if you're stuck, you find yourself stuck and you're spending hours on something. We don't want that to happen. We want to move you through so you aren't stuck and you continue to learn. Okay. So grading overall is on pass-fail basis assigned by the instructor. So after the final exam, the instructor will evaluate and provide feedback on course performance to each student. So I also provide feedback on assignments and quizzes and the final exam also as we go through class. So really any type of assignment that you have in this class or anything that you're doing on your own, you'll hand it in through Slack and I will provide feedback on it. So assignments themselves, we will have one of those after every class except for this first class and the 7th class and the final week. We won't have an assignment that week because we'll be finishing up the class project. Plus the assignments build on each other. They're actually going to be, as you do them, each one of them builds towards the completion of the class project. So I'll structure each one so that if you do each one of the homeworks, you'll be pretty much there for completing the class project at the end. So it is important to stay current with assigned work. I'm not going to put an exact due date on it, but if you hand them in the following Monday, that would be a good time by the following Monday, because then by that time we're off to like different subject matter. So for this week, we have homework on Wednesday. Having that done on Monday would be beneficial that I could provide you feedback as you start to use SQL. Or next week's classes, you could finish both those homeworks on the following Monday, and you'd be in pretty good shape. Because then what we'll do is take a quiz on Monday over the previous week. I like to do that because just to refresh everybody, like where we've been and where we're going. Like what did we learn last week and where are we headed this week? So trying to hand them in before we take the quiz is a good goal. And it gives you a week and then the weekend to complete the homeworks. We'll have a final exam. It'll be the last 2 hours of the final class. Open book and open notes. I believe in that. It'll be multiple choice, diagramming, short answers. And I also like to put practical examples in there, practical questions like, in this situation, if your manager is asking you this question, how would you write a query on this database? Or how would you design this database and so forth? So I like to put practical questions on there also to test your knowledge. Just really see if the knowledge you gained in the class, you're able to really think about how you're going to apply it in the future. And then last is a class project. The goal of this is to create an end product that's similar to what would be produced in a business environment using the skills and knowledge you gain in this course. It has multiple steps. So tonight will be the first step. We'll do setup, and then each one will follow the successive lectures and homeworks for each one of the class, leading up to the last week or the last lecture, where we'll answer that final business question. So I will have the class project out to you by Wednesday. We won't have it tonight. I'm restructuring it a bit from the past, so it's when I get a test on everyone this time. But I think it's going to be good. Like the class project's going to be good and a little bit cleaner than we had in the past. So I'll get that to everyone on Tuesday with a description of the problem that you're trying to solve and then the different steps and then where we're trying to get to at the end. So it gives you a roadmap for kind of like where we are and where we're headed in the class. Okay. So class schedule, we have a class schedule here for each one of the classes. We're going to talk more about the project in our second lecture. But tonight, this is the first hour. Second hour, we'll do lecture. Third hour, we'll do kind of a homework one. It won't really be that much of homework for you. Hopefully we can get this all done in class, getting you set up with Slack, which it looks like everybody has. And then MySql Workbench and get the database set up so you can start doing the material in this class. But in general, how these lectures are structured is hour one, we will do some learning where I lecture. So I always think of these as kind of like a me. So it's like me teaching you, then us learning it together with examples. That's usually either the second or third hour. And I try to mix in examples as I go. And then the last part's you. So it's a me, us, and then you with doing the homework and the class projects outside. So like this would be, we'd lecture the first 2 hours the second week, or then the second class, and then we'll do a lab with examples and get you introduced to homework 2 in the project. So it covers all the topics we talked about: extracting and storing data, joining and merging data, so bringing those data sources together, cleaning data using SQL, database design. So with the knowledge you have, how can you design a database that helps you capture that and manage that data, advanced database functions. And then our final class, we'll have a really short lecture of things that I've taught in the past. And then you'll do a final, and then we'll work on finishing up the class project. So hopefully you're doing the homework along this and helping you out. and we can finish it up here right at the end of class in the beginning of April. Okay. So that's where we are headed for this class. It's a journey, but it's a very fast, it is a quick 4 weeks, but fairly comprehensive of like, feel like this is a pretty good data analyst and BI analyst data set that you could say that you learn these things to an employer. And if you can show them and write them, show them a project or some of the work that you've done, hopefully maybe you could with this project, that it's a good skill set for like entry level data work at a company or data analyst or BI work at a company, which is the goal. Okay.
Do people take this class standalone, or do most people come from the Power BI Tableau course?
I have taught this where it was standalone. So it could be either one, really. Usually people are going through Data Science Academy and they go through a series of classes to get the certificate. But I did teach it to what's that insurance company over there on the edge of downtown? Physicians Mutual. Yeah. I taught some of their call center people how to write SQL so that they could produce like their own call center reports, use their data and load it into tables and create their own reports. And then we used some of their data. So I took their data and made practical examples out of it. So it caught on even more. I think I've taught it separately like that twice out of the 6 times. Usually it's part of Data Science Academy.
I meant as a one-off.
Oh, do people usually take it that way? You were saying, do people usually take it that way? Most of them are going through Data Science Academy, but sometimes there are people who just want the skill. I had a lady, she took it like 3 times with me. She just liked the class and wanted to relearn it. And I liked having her in the class. She took it like 3 times, but it was for her own learning. She's doing it as part of her job. She works at Omaha South. So she works with like OPS, and she moved from being a teacher to administrative. So she's asked to put together these new reports for like grants and funding and performance at Omaha South High School and stuff like that. They're like more of an administrative role, but she knew the school really well and is just getting familiar with data and those skills. And she does well now. I thought that for a second maybe she'd be in this class, but yeah, she probably had enough.
When I looked at databases like the relational database, it seems like to be a little bit confusing to me. It's just kind of like where things that were the things.
Oh, yeah, it starts to get a little more challenging when you do joins. And a relational database is in the sense like how you relate data or how you bring tables together and data structures together. It starts to get, instead of just writing code, it gets a little more conceptual. Like you have to think about like start to think about how you're bringing it together. Yeah, we'll do that in this class.
So like, what our ability to work with access?
Good.
Even though that's supposed to be a lousy thing.
No, I almost created, for my last client, Microsoft Access solution for them, but it was missing some functionality that I needed. So I did it in Python instead, but I was going to do it in Microsoft Access. And it's like a simplified version of SQL. You'll learn if you learn SQL here, even if you're learning MySql database, that it pretty much translates to all of the different relational database servers and systems. They're just like small differences between like MySql and Microsoft SQL Server or IBM DB2 or Microsoft Access and those things. But I think all those things, once you learn the basics, it's just like looking it up. And now that you can use, I say AI because I was just using that to try to figure out how I was going to try to do something for a client. And it ended up too complicated and the database ran way too slow. So like, I'm like, oh, I'm just going to do this in Python instead. It'll be a better like solution for them, but it may be a good, so Access might be a good solution for you. But I used AI to help me figure it out a lot faster instead of like beating my head against the wall trying to make this thing work and doing 50 Google searches and stuff like that.
And then when you go to Access, you can like press that map and like you can generate like a map of all the relational databases.
Yep, you can do that inside of MySql Workbench too, which we're installing most of these. I'll give everyone a quick view of it. Most of these IDEs, integrated development environments where you write code, you can go in and be able to see how they'll give you a schematic of how all the database tables come together.
It's like the guts of things, and then
They're all the tables.
it's like considered the guts of a lot of things, you know.
It is. So behind a lot of systems or applications, you have a bunch of relational database tables behind it that capture the data. We'll learn about that in, it's called OLTP. It's online transactional processing. You can design a database specifically to store transactions from systems. But you also did,
We will learn that.
yeah. Yep, we do a lot of the query, and once we start to wrap our heads around relations and joins, we'll learn a little bit about that because it's also important when you get on the job to be able to look at a schematic and then say, okay, this is how I'm going to bring the data together. Like otherwise, it's really hard. It can be really hard to conceptualize it. So I think it's like really valuable, especially if like you're at a company and nobody knows much about the things behind the scenes, and then it's up to you as a data analyst to figure it out. Being able to read those type of charts is a big deal in understanding the system and getting the right data. Great, good questions. I like the questions. And I'll do a quick introduction of myself. We're almost to the end of the first hour, so don't want to spend too much time on this, and then we'll get charging on it the second hour. Okay, so I will bring up class files. Actually, I'll just bring up PowerPoint. So just a really quick introduction on my background. I have a LinkedIn profile. Feel free to visit it. I've done a lot with data in my career in different areas. And I was saying before class, done pretty much whatever a business has asked me to, from understanding a system to going and get the data, all the way up to advanced analytics. It's pretty much covers everything. At points, I've been like a one-man army. But learned a lot over 17 years. My goal is to let you or teach you so the time to learn it, your learning curve is way faster than mine over 17 years was through just all that experience, is to make it a lot faster for you than it was for me. Bachelor of Science in Computer Science, Master of Science in Statistics. Recently received an MBA from Creighton. The other ones were from Nebraska-Lincoln. Work as a consultant. So both as a management consultant and technical consultant. So trying to speak the language of business people and technical people at the same time is really valuable, especially in data science and analytics. We'll talk a little bit about that as part of philosophy. I'm from the area, have 3 girls, lifetime learner, love sports, and love putting like data with different things. So like business news or cryptocurrency or finance, putting data with that or putting data with sports. I love, when I was a kid, I loved baseball cards, just looking at the back of them and thinking about like performance, like a weird kid like that. Or putting data with exercise, like tracking my workouts and things like that, see where the opportunities exist. Pretty much put data with everything. It's like catch up. except I'm putting data with it. Okay. So I'll let everybody during break, I'll give you a little bit of an extended break to do introductions in Slack. Just tell me how to pronounce your name. Don't want to mess it up on the first day. Say, where are you from? Where are you from originally? What's your current job or field or expertise? What interested you in this class? And maybe also, what are your aspirations for taking this class and learning it on the job? Is it a lot of people come in just to build on their skill set, or they're in a new role like call center clients or the call center managers, or the lady who moved into administration at OPS, or they're just looking at a career change. Let me know about that. Happy to give you feedback and some of my experience. Not bad feedback, just sharing with you. And then what do you hope to get out of this class? So I'll read that and definitely tailor a few things to what people are most interested in as we go. So I'll let you do that over break. We'll take a little bit longer break to grab snack and do some of that, or do some introductions. Data science philosophy. So this is one thing as part of Omaha Data Science Academy that we always like to cover. The unique thing about Data Science Academy is everybody in it works in data, but has worked in data at some point, but they're going to have very different perspectives based on like what they've done for their career. So if you've done like advanced AI modeling, you can have a very different point of view, or the way you learn things, or maybe even the way you teach them, than what I've done. I've done a little bit of everything across all sorts of different industries. I've been both an analyst and engineer. So I would say mine is like the combined view of both of them. That's what this image up here is, like a modern data scientist. I've done a little bit of everything on this. So you don't not so much in this class. This would be like your data science track where you'd learn more of the math and statistics. It is definitely important in both to have domain knowledge and soft skills. So knowledge of systems, knowledge of data. Give me 1 second. Being passionate and curious about the data. Those are more like qualities. You'll learn in this class, it's more about programming and database. There's some really advanced databases in here. We won't touch on those, but we'll learn a lot about relational databases. I also teach the cloud engineering class in the advanced track too, where we touch on some more of these storage technologies. And then communication and visualization, what you learned in Tableau class oftentimes is being able to like tell that story, to really be able to, for people to be able to not just see everything as data, but turning data into information, like visually, that somebody can just see and know and interact with. Yep.
So is there such thing as like a chief data officer like that you could be?
There are in companies, they're like more of a, well, they're like, they call them chief data officer because they put them on an executive team.
Right.
And then they'd have like a bunch of influence as far as data is concerned within the organization. Usually that's like chief data officer would be like, they'd have their eye on the data. It'd be like how they use the data, how you use the data within the organization, and then like keeping it clean and how you store it and what type of analytics you do with it.
That is a job that exists, chief data officer.
Yeah.
And would you be qualified for that?
Would I be qualified?
I'm just curious because it sounds like you have like a lot of.
If I get somebody to believe believe that I'm an executive, yeah, I guess. I do consulting, so
Well, now you have the MBA.
yeah. I'm not looking to do it in an organization so much, surprisingly. I kind of like helping people who have never been there before, like what it looks like. So like some smaller companies will be like, and where do we even start with the data? And it could be as simple as like Microsoft Access and building them their first pipeline to be able to create the first report. And then they'll come back to me for advice. They'll say, what should we do next? And then you help them along that path. I like that as much as anything instead of just being an executive, I think. I have a pretty good vision of like, there's like a Gartner BI maturity model that has like the different steps, like helping organizations go up the BI maturity model. There's actually a lot of work. I've done so much of this work because there's so much that it usually takes just to be able to get to like AI or advanced models.
You can assess an enterprise in BI maturity, like all together.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. Some of it I just kind of like doing my own work too. I think as much as anything.
Because you have so much experience, I wonder like what that.
Yeah, it's usually I'd still do some of my own hands-on work too, occasionally with projects. I just did that with the client because nobody there had the skills, so I just put something together to kind of like show them how it's done.
And if you do have like a small business, like show them where they need to go and all this kind of stuff, you would let them know like what kind of people they need to hire.
Yeah,
then you could tell Nate and he could like tell us.
Yeah. I've advised companies. I had a client at the beginning of 2023. They were part of an acquisition, and the acquiring company was asking them to expand their BI capabilities, and they didn't really know what that looked like. They had a couple of analysts like doing reports, and we gave them advice on that, like what growth looks like who the people, processes, and technology were. We were going to build it for them, but they went with somebody else, but still got paid some consulting hours. But no advice. We gave them good advice that helped them make the right decision anyway. So that's okay. You don't always need the big project or the big money. Anyway, they ultimately made a better decision that way anyway, which I'm cool. I'm cool with that. Right. So I have 2 slides here, understanding the role of data analyst. So this is a data analyst track in Omaha Data Science Academy. Very much applicable skills with relational database and SQL to the role of data analyst. So in times your job is data collection, gathering it from all sorts of different sources, not just a system, but maybe other databases, spreadsheets. In my data engineering class, I talk about how to get it from the internet and REST APIs and how to manage it. So data collection becomes a big part of it. In relational databases help you collect structured data. Being able to do some analysis, not necessarily statistical analysis, just some bringing data together to turn data into information through being able to do analysis and draw meaningful conclusions. Like a consultant with the data. We have a Google example of what they do at Google. They support projects from search algorithms to YouTube optimization, impacting millions. One of the advantages of me in my career is that I've got to work with management a lot, just the types of questions that they ask. They could ask just about anything, really. And having somebody who can take that and go to the technical side and get them the data and information they need is huge for any question that they have. One of the huge things is data cleaning. They talk about that often being like 70 or 80% of your effort. I would agree with that. Even a recent project I worked on, probably 30 out of 50 hours was just understanding the data and then looking for weird values in it and then writing a script to clean it up. And you can do that in SQL too. And then visualizing it, so creating graph charts and dashboards that communicates findings to stakeholders, taking that data and turning it into the information that they need visually. So there are a lot of similarities between that and data analyst track and Omaha Data Science Academy, learning all those skills, it's a pretty good skill set, like being able to do visualization, learning relational databases. A lot of systems always are collecting data in databases, or maybe you have analytics databases. And I forgot what the third one I was going to say was. Oh, Python, being able to sometimes like connect and extract and clean up data in a different way is a pretty powerful skill set. Makes for a pretty good data analyst skill set.
What is like business intelligence? Because it's like because it's very adaptive being business intelligence.
I think business intelligence to me, so the hard thing is that a lot of places define it differently, or even a data scientist. To me, business intelligence is to data like IT is to technology and systems. IT is kind of like all-encompassing, right? Because you could have like help desk, you could have programmers, you could have system administrators, you could have a wide range of different jobs.
Business intelligence is really
Business-
non-specific.
Yeah, I think of business intelligence, you have data science inside of business intelligence. You have people who do advanced AI. You have engineers, you have data analysts. So anything business intelligence is like, the way I define it is like, how do you take the data and turn that into information that the business can use? It's like making the business more intelligent because you're doing data-driven decision making instead of just doing everything by your gut. And all of those help in it in different ways. All those roles, the engineers, data scientists, data analysts. I'm forgetting one of them. BI developers, any title that they give you underneath. They all have different things, but ultimately their goal is the same. Even a data engineer is like making use out of the data, like structuring it in a way that it can be used. Architect, yeah, data architect. I've had data architect role too with cloud systems. So architecting it for like repeatable processes and storing historical data to make better decisions, which is a lot harder than it sounds. It can be a lot more complicated and harder than it sounds.
Yeah, that makes me think like what I'm thinking of is like if you're dealing with executive, management teams and they don't know data, but you know data, is like the part of your role to help them manage their expectations about it.
Mm-hmm. Took a big drink there, but you use influence in a way, you help them understand the data, and you try to do it in a non-biased way as well as possible. It's not what all management is always looking for, but you try to guide them and use your influence and persuasion to guide them to the right understanding of it. And then some of it's up to them a little bit, but you're like a partner, you're a business partner to them on the technical side, because oftentimes technical side and business side doesn't speak the same language at all. It's like two different languages. Yeah, I learned a lot before that, just working with people in management. The MBA just formalized it, I guess. And it says, I can't say that it wasn't a little bit for the title and for people to recognize it instead of just being a technical person. As they see all your skills in there, like, oh, this person's a technical person. And it's like, well, there's a lot more than that.
I'm asking because I want to know like how to use it.
Same thing, the rest of us too.
It's a good introduction because then you put it all together with the rest of it.
Yeah.
Okay, and then the last slide, there are different responsibilities of data analysts. It goes into a little more detail. We talked about all of these at this point. Gathering and prep, data analysis and analysis and interpretation, which we were literally talking about a second ago. Reporting and presentation, using Tableau and tools like that. Collaborating with teams, having strong analytical and problem-solving skills. Understanding systems and processes. That can't really be underestimated because even IT people may only have a little piece of the information. They don't see the entire picture of the system. So the more you can understand about a system and how people are doing things, the better recommendations you can make to management, or the better information you can turn that into. Being able to communicate is good, especially between business people and on the management side. And then attention to detail is ensuring accuracy in data and reporting. So sometimes that's not as straightforward as it sounds. Systems can generate errors when capturing data, or some of the data may need some interpretation or some additional understanding to know how accurate it is. So like the client project I just did, the first thing I did was just load it and try to understand as much about the data set and like how it's created as possible. So it's a bunch of job codes for repairing farm equipment. And I'd seen similar data before, but just understanding like the work orders and all the things underneath of it, and like why some values are different or what some of the values were, as like my first step. And then understanding the process of how they labeled codes and things like that, or parts that they needed in code. And then you could provide them with that knowledge, you provide them a better solution. And they're really grateful for that because you take my expertise and like get them down that path a lot faster than they would have been able to do it. And one of the guys recently went through the data analyst track, so that makes it easier too.
Well,
With that idea is that I take it and hand it off to him and guide him.
I know that it's a thing because we used to have one of the jobs where I worked, we had a database, and we wanted to move it online. We wanted to switch it to like instead of a homemade database, which we had, which was just added to it over the years, and we couldn't find a company to do it. Our data was so convoluted.
Yeah. Especially when you keep changing things in systems all the time.
Yeah.
It takes like a understanding of what happened historically almost, and sometimes that history is gone.
Yeah.
Which is data engineers' job, is to try to capture that history before it's, and clean it up before it's too late, before it's gone for good inside the system. One of the many jobs, underappreciated jobs of the data engineer. All right. Well, that's it for the first hour. That's the introduction. Give everyone about 15 minutes till 7:30 to put in introductions, ask any questions. And lecture is pretty light tonight. It's just getting you introduced to SQL programming language and relational databases. We only do code at the very end to try to, and then we'll try to get set up and run that code. And then you could say, I know the SQL programming language. Well, maybe not. I've used the SQL programming language and I know a little bit of it. It's kind of like learning a new language and then being able to say like 2 words and somebody understanding.
But like SQL sounds like it's been around for a long time.
Me?
SQL has been around for a long time.
Yeah, SQL.
And there's so many, a lot of the languages change all the time, but this is one of the basic languages.
I do. I think we talked about it in the first lecture of why SQL's so popular is it's been around for 50 years.
Yeah.
And it's just a robust way of storing structured data. And literally millions of IT professionals have the skill set. There's some advanced ways of storing data, but they're usually like edge cases for data, like using a graph database to store social network data. That's not like most data. Most data people are just naturally think of it like an Excel spreadsheet, or think of it in a relational database way, like record after record, and capturing information that way. It's not going anywhere,
Yeah.
or maybe never going anywhere.
50 years is like dinosaurs.
It's just an intuitive way to capture transactions and do analysis and things. And the programming language, the relational piece of it, being able to bring data together like that, and then the language to be able to do so much with it. And it's not like a complicated language like learning like C++ is or anything like that, like the details of it. I feel like it's pretty like native. The biggest part is like conceptually understanding how you need to bring the data together is like one of the most challenging parts, more so than writing the code. Oh, obsolete in 5 years?
Yeah, from SQL.
I don't think so.
Unless AI didn't make something up.
It can always write code, but it may not understand the system or the process or something like that. I mean, I consider AI as my aid. Maybe in 5 years' time, I'd have to revisit that or something, where it could do everything, but it still takes like human understanding and intuition to just understand the data or the problem and stuff like that. I consider it my aid until it starts taking over all my stuff. And maybe I'd like that. Maybe I wouldn't have to do, or I don't know what I'd do with my time. Like I wouldn't have a job.
It sounds like he's using AI to help him do the job that he does.
That's very interesting because I mostly hear other coders in the traditional C++ and other languages use AI. Does using AI differ with SQL and Python than in any other language? You know, as far as
I'll generate the code for you, right? So I'll bring up an example during break. I'll let everyone take a break, but I'll show you how I used it on my last project, and even trying to build an access solution, and then I decided it wasn't a very good solution, and that must have saved me just that like 10 hours of like doing research and then trying a bunch of different things. It just generated code for me, and I'm like, it's not code that's like maintainable or I want to use, and it's too slow and they won't be able to maintain it. So I like write the best solution for them. It's kind of like I still do hands-on work because AI makes it pretty easy. Like I can see the code. It's kind of like being an advanced developer. I can see the code and then be like, oh, is this a good solution or not? Or how do I need to change it? Or did AI get it wrong? Or not necessarily wrong, but do I need to like refine the output that it gave me? Like, do I need to direct it in like a different way? Is it giving me the answer that I'm looking for?
And that's where your expertise comes in.
Yeah. So even like as I won't go into it too much, but everybody's like, oh, it's not useful at all for new kids to learn how to program. But it still is because it takes some of that. You just do your job a lot faster. The learning curve's a lot faster. It's not like right now where the code that it even writes for like Python needs a lot of troubleshooting still, or it needs a lot to get it to where you need to be. No, it's pretty good. Usually you give it like an Excel sheet and then you ask it to write a query to do something, and it's a pretty good query. I'll show you how I did that over break. I'll record it. I'll let everyone take a 15-minute break, grab something to eat, and I'll record it here over break, actually. But feel free to take the next 15 minutes till about 7:35 to answer questions or introduce yourself or ask any questions in Slack and see if I had any questions.
Message from Elizabeth. She's restarting permission.
Yeah, that's a good time to do it. So far, so good with the StreamYard broadcast. I've thought about doing helping nonprofits out. There's a lot of reporting that needs to, government reporting that needs to happen. And just setting up like that initial reporting or being able to capture that, help them with the data that they need to capture. They sometimes don't even have the data.
It's true. It's true.
And then giving them advice on it and then being saying, hey, here's what you can do. I'd rather do that than be a business executive anyway.
Yeah. I want my friends to know that I have a lot of friends in the nonprofit world.
Be more of a free bird that way.
Philosophy-based consulting.
I like working on different projects and learning different things and different companies and how they do it. And it applies to like everything, and I get to learn something new each time I do a project. And then I get to share my advice. It all builds on each other too when you're a consultant. You get to take all the knowledge that you have from all the different places that you're working and you bring that knowledge to someone. And everyone is a new experience where you learn something. You take all your experience, but you get to build on it. So I've been doing do a combination of consulting and teaching and whatever Nate has or whatever I come across. Hands-on work because it's becoming pretty easy for me with AI. I can do things in like less than half the time, probably like a third of the time. And then that way it pays pretty well then too. If you can do things in a third of the time for the same amount of pay, project pay. Or just doing research for a client. That's probably where I save the most time. So if I'm researching a problem, I don't even know where to start. Ask AI and direct it. Use it as like, I told my daughter, like my business buddy, it's like my business buddy when I have like a business question.
Yeah, I asked it a lot of things since the new AI, you just type the question and gives you a coherent answer. So sometimes you would say weird data, the website may not be related to but AI is pretty open.
Oftentimes if I
it can get better, but
oftentimes if I feel like the answer's completely off the rails, I just restate my question.
that's true.
Or I go to OpenAI instead of Claude AI, or I'll just go to different LLM. Then it might give me a better answer.
I don't even go to any AI. I type this question in the browser and it's like it does AI by itself now. So
Yeah, they have it built into the searches now.
Yeah, very, very
I think the AI that's on the search engines are, I don't know, I don't think much of Bing, but on Google it does a decent job of just summarizing the topic over like all the websites and the videos and stuff like that. Like that's the most valuable part of the search right now is like that. Top generation, then you have to weed through all the marketing garbage and all the garbage links. But they've indexed like Reddit and Quora and Stack Overflow So they actually index like all of people's conversations to.
And that's on Claude?
It's actually like Google.
Okay, Studio.
But Claude is, well, OpenAI supposedly has like basically all the content on the internet. That's even possible, but close to all the information on the internet, on the World Wide Web.
Started building my home lab for the first time, ubiquity and stuff. So kind of looking to build my own data server and just play with it a little bit too.
Oh, what type of server are you building?
Just anything. I'm looking to maybe get a suggestion for me, you know, like
I have a couple I built myself.
something dangerous enough with data, you know, just anything to both keep me stay current and keep learning both on networking and data side. So it does both ends at the same time.
I have my own BI server that I built that just has all the tools that I like on it in Python, Anaconda Python, and Tableau on it, and other tools I use for consulting. I use App Machine for the work that I do.
I was so excited to spin it up, and now I have it, and I get like a home assistant server. And I'm like, yeah, that's useful. And then I'm so excited about Docker. What am I going to use it for? You know, that's my fault.
Building. Do you use it for building contained apps?
Yeah.
I find it useful if you're running multiple apps and you need separate environments for it. I find it more useful for like web apps or web interfaces than I do data science. Or things that you need to run in parallel or something. Kind of an amateur. I am an amateur developer, but AI makes me feel like I'm not quite as much. Like a programmer. I know Python well, but there's all sorts of different areas of programming and programming languages. Even systems architects like data architects.
That's very high. That's not very high.
Yeah, and then you're thinking more about like systems and how to put those together to accomplish your goals. That one's more like data science, advanced like predictive and data science models. Let me show everyone what I did for my project and how you might use this. Or how I use AI. So especially if you're just stuck in a spot or like don't even know what to do next. I ask it like medical questions and like stuff about weightlifting and like eyeglass coverage. I asked it like everything. Compare. My daughters and I were like comparing the presidency of Truman and Eisenhower the other day. She's taking she's a high schooler, so she's taking like a modern American history class. We're talking about it.
People are feeding their blood work into AI. And I hear more and more cases where AI is.
There's this website. I was recently working on a project. Self-Decode is called. That's what they do. So- So, I was recently doing a project. Yeah. So I learned a lot about a new domain. I was working, it's like a consulting data scientist on this app that my friend's building. A friend and some of the people, he got a medical doctor, an ER doctor, and they're trying to decide like what type of services could help doctors be more predictive in like their ERs and the diagnoses. And one of them was adding DNA background to it, because the doctor is saying is like you don't have any of that information when someone comes in. You have either, maybe if you're lucky, you have like a running history in some system, but oftentimes it's like incomplete too. So they're trying to bring together the records from different systems and then add that type of DNA information. And we were looking at self-decode. They have AI, and then they have like recommendations based on your DNA analysis and potential health challenges. And this type of stuff is just getting started. They have like 50 medical doctors working on this. Yeah, they're ethical concerns too, right? The doctor is just thinking like, how could we do this better? How could we improve outcomes through this knowledge? But yeah, you have to be careful with all that and the decisions that you're making off of it, or even like increasing people's health insurance rates because they have some condition. Right?
The law is not keeping up with technology.
Yeah.
So it's like the Wild West right now.
Yeah, in a lot of ways.
Well, everybody should take this.
See,
Everybody should take this class.
I
Everybody should go to it.
see high school kids making 10, 20 grand, but creating like with AI marketing. I call them scams, but they're not scams. They're legit. Almost like
I have my own small business too. I run a boba tea store, and I can just generate all my own marketing content. You tell it, you give it a campaign. Here's what I have this in. No, I don't have this in Cloud. I had it in AI. I had that image in Wally.
Canva has AI on it now.
Yeah, I need to start using Canva's AI.
Yeah, Canva, but I feel like you can start in Canva and take it to a place where the AI is much better.
It can help you refine. It helps you refine all of it.
But as a starter, I think it's
Now,
repository Canva is probably better, with some pretty cool samples. But I feel like if you want to take it to the next level with AI, just take it from their environment.
yeah, I give you a start, and then you just feed it into this and like guide it to where you need.
So Dolly.
It's Dolly, not Wally. Wally's like the movie. Follow on Instagram, log in. I just created some marketing content here.
Rocky's good, but he asks for money after the third image.
Oh.
I did a historical figure from back where I'm from, and it was very interesting to capture. He's trying to run away, and then his friends got died. Like it's like one of the biggest events in our history. But of course, there were no pictures of it. So I basically said, "Hey, use this guy's picture. This is a historical context. Make it dramatic. Put in like all his needs.
Okay.
slug and just cheat like the whole
Yeah.
move something.
Just ask, do something.
And I had to talk to it quite a bit. Took me about 7 right pictures till I got it to a decent place where I could look at it. And it looked like something somebody made professionally from the movies, like a movie. The whole action, it's insane. But it does hallucinate here and there, so I have to backtrack.
Okay.
Yeah.
It
Yes.
looks like weird.
Ask it something differently.
Almost sound like it looks like a baseball cap. And I'm like, this is from the 1785, you know, what are you doing?
So yeah, I fed it in an image of one of our drapes. It does do it at President's Day special. My girls love this too. And then I just refined it. I'm like, add a top hat to this image and try to make the boba. It didn't really do like that original boba bar. I wanted like this logo on there. It didn't really do that. Say that adds Abraham's. Yeah, so then it like put ears on it, and then it made it a little bit closer. And then I'm like, just put George Washington in there, sharing a boba. My girls thought that was the funniest. It was entertaining too, but that's how good it is. Like, how long would that take you back in the day using like Photoshop or something like that? I don't know if you're really good. Probably take you like 30 minutes. I don't know, but just did it instantly.
To beat it because it does that in 5 seconds, you know. Like,
It's actually really hard to do things like that. It's super hard. It's a long time.
Well, and it does weird things sometimes, like puts like a 6th finger in there or something. I've seen extra finger or like a second hand or something like that.
that's some weird stuff.
You laugh, you crack up to yourself when you see that.
So, you know, you go to these benches, 2 or 3, you get some on it, but I use photography. You get 3 images, 3.
So
And then it says, hey, that will take 2 hours.
for my project I started to realize that Microsoft Access, I needed to calculate the median of a field for some calculations for some job code estimations and recommendations. And they gave me an example, but the example didn't work. So it gave me a generic one. I just wanted to ask, like, how can I even do this in Access? Because I didn't know. How can I calculate the median by a field? So we'll learn about grouping. So I wanted to do it by job code and the median per job code. Then I started to do it myself. I had an error in it when I tried to use example, and I'm like, please fix this. And it found like the syntax error. Sometimes you could look at something for 20 or 30 minutes, especially in SQL, and not see the error. So you can dump it in there and be like, why is my query not running? And it's really informative, right? Because it'll be like, I didn't see where it was. You had an extra code after the word from codify data. I ran it again, and I'm like, this code is too slow. And then it provides an alternative approach. I tried to do that. Then it wanted me to create some like temporary tables in Visual Basic, and then I'm just like, there's no way that guy's gonna be able to maintain that. So then I just went to Python, and it generated that version of the query in Python. Instead of having to do all that work on like just figuring out how I would do it in Python, it gives you like a super starting place. And then I refined it just a little bit. So I provided him a much better solution in just 30 minutes of time instead of at least 10 hours. would have taken me to do that by hand. Like trying to even figure out like the possibilities, like what I could potentially do. It just directed me to that. And then I had some like invoice date formatting issues, and then I gave it like what the date looks like. We'll learn about like data types in this class too. But I mean, this is the future really, so there's no reason like not to use it in this class, especially like as you're learning, it's super valuable instead of being stuck on something like, oh, I forgot a comma somewhere and my code doesn't run and I've been looking at it for 30 minutes. I don't know why this thing won't run. I don't know how many times I've done that. And then then I give it to like someone and they're like, oh, you forgot it right here. It took them like 2 minutes. Like been looking at that for the last 30 minutes. And then I created this diagram for them on how this pipeline, you can automatically create a pipeline or documentation. So it saved me time in creating documentation. And then I refined that a little bit. And then I just started asking it other business questions, I think. And I'm starting to ask it even to generate the class project in this class using one of the databases. I just have to finish it up for everyone. Okay. I went a little bit over, but hopefully everybody online was able to see that also, how you might use a tool like this. And I think it's perfectly legitimate. Just don't use it to solve all of your problems. Or like, here's the thing that you could easily do is like why they don't use it in like elementary or high school is because there'd be a lot of lazy students who just copy everything and paste out of it. So they limit that, but like I told my daughter is that like it can give you a good starting place if you are like writing a big research paper on a topic. Just do that and see where to start instead of having to pull up all your sources and like weed through all of it and write your outline. It'll write an outline for you and you can just refine the outline, and then it's still your work. You're still I write all of it in.
It's a really huge deal. Like they're really cracking down on like not using AI.
Yeah, because education hasn't caught up to it either. They don't know how to do it yet. How to integrate it. But we're going to integrate it in this class. It's like the future of this work. I think about it, how I'd use it in these classes. Use it as an aid for your learning. But you have to then make sure that students in elementary and high school are actually learning the material instead of just using it to do all of their work. That's the biggest part. It probably takes more policing, really. But all of the checks that they do anyway, like plagiarism checks, you could probably still tell, maybe. All right. But there's a lot you can do there. So yeah, it's crazy. I just told my daughter I wouldn't tell her school if she used it to help her get a starting point on her research paper, as long as she did all of her own work and original thought and stuff like that. There's some professors though, I was listening to, they're totally open to it. Like in their classes, they are starting to like tell the students to use it for certain things. So you may have to direct them a little bit, but I could still tell on the final exam in my data engineering class who just took AI answers out and pasted them into the final exam. You can tell by the writing and the tone, but someday it's going to be good enough that you might not even know the difference.
There's an engine out there that helps you find by topic the most important words. And then another engine, you copy the titles of the topics, and so it summarize each topic. And then the third you can say make an action plan for the,
Yeah.
the metric they had an example of team building. And a lady that had no idea, she hadn't taken the same class or anything about team building. She, within 15 minutes, did an action plan she could execute for the team. She could nail down team building. Or the question again, once it goes, when it goes off, does she know where to bring it back? That's the question. But nevertheless, in 15 minutes, it's more probably than weeks or if it takes.
It's helping me tremendously develop my classes that I teach.
But like you said, there's AI website.
They're called engines that basically kind of like websites.
It's not what I was looking for.
That they go into sources. And the interesting thing was, she had into the sources of the most quoted sources. They didn't actually show the content.
Now I'm looking for.
And found PDF abstracts of the papers. And she said, it's great, the top 5 abstracts, it summarizes everything you learned from it. And gave a summary, and then the last engine basically specialized in action plans. And she said, okay, make this actionable so my teams do learn from this.
You have to know which engines are specializing things like that.
If you go on YouTube, there's tons
Okay,
of,
you just Google it, use it.
you can say AI engine for XYZ.
And Google?
Yeah, you can say for marketing.
Okay, best AI engine for.
Just like we're showing for coding here, there's different types of.
I use Claude. I think it's the best. One thing before I continue, I should move on to the lecture. One thing you can do when you're writing code, or SQL code in particular, is that I don't have an example pulled up, but you can give it a spreadsheet. You can upload a file and put it in an Excel spreadsheet like you would see in a relational database table, and then ask it to write you code. That's probably the most cheating in this class, but it would get you, if you didn't know where else to start, it would be able to do that. And almost always you have to make some little change to it anyway. So if somebody, may get a table name or a column name wrong or something like that, say if you just copied and pasted it and gave me the answer, I would know. Like, especially if you just copied and pasted it and it didn't really work, or it didn't really answer the question, right? So even if you got the code that way, you still want to make sure that the code's right for the question that's being asked. Okay. And it's not always perfect when it comes to that. So I have no problem with using it in the class. It's future of where development's going, and I use it a ton in my all my consulting projects. It's making my life better, I would say. Yeah. Okay. So lecture 1, data manipulation and SQL basics, an overview. Mentioned it quite a bit so far, but understanding how to use relational databases for managing data. So extraction out of systems and storing it in a relational database, and then being able to manipulate it with the SQL programming language. Okay. So overall course objectives, and I covered this in the syllabus, but understand the need and purpose for being able to do this, have these skills, cleaning and management within data science projects. We've talked about this already quite a bit in class, so I'll go through it fast. Common queries, aggregations and joins using SQL programming language, combining disparate data sets, performing common data extraction, cleaning, transform, and load tasks. We'll do one section specifically on cleaning data in SQL, one lecture. Theory behind database design, not just theory, but also some practical exercises on how you would design a relational database and the tables and the relationships between the tables. and then evaluating at the end. I have a special lecture on, once you know that, different cloud storage and NoSQL alternatives. So this is more of what I teach in data engineering, but the very last class, I'll give you a sneak peek into it. Okay, so how's the class structured? I talked about this a little bit. The first hour, at least with the quizzes at the beginning of each week, those are on Mondays, I review like the previous week's content, and I may do a quick review of just the previous lecture to let you know where we're at the beginning of the class, no more than like 10 minutes. We do a topic 1 lecture the first hour, do a topic 2 lecture the second hour, and start to apply it through exercises. And then third hour, we go hands-on, and then we work on homework, class project questions, any questions you have. So try to save the last hour for as much like hands-on and work between students and us as possible. So class 1 objectives: what is the need for data manipulation and management? What is SQL? Why learn SQL? So what is the SQL programming language? What is a query? So how do you query a table to be able to obtain the data that you need from it, and using the various SQL clauses? There are a couple different clauses you can use to guide the relational database to what information you need from what table, some limiting conditions and things like that. We'll get an introduction to that. What's a relational database? What is a table? And how is data structured within a table? Basically, we're going to say, why is this called a relational database? Why is it defined this way? What are the most common SQL data types? You'll see like character strings, numbers, decimals, all the different types of data types, but specifically focus on the most common. And then how could you learn more about SQL? AI is just starting to, even my last slide, I point to some different resources. There's some good ones on like where you can go for more practice. Those are definitely helpful. But more and more, I'm just going to Claude AI to answer questions because it's indexing all this information that people put out there anyway. But I'll share some of that with you too. I might find useful. Okay, so what is the need for data manipulation? So you can create new data sets and combine disparate data sets, creation and extraction. So this is really where SQL and being a data analyst is powerful, is understanding how to create a new data set and new insights from that data set that somebody may have never thought about before. So combining data in ways to be able to see things from a new perspective. A SQL programming language, as long as you have the structured data in a relational database, you can do that with the SQL programming language. So performing common queries, aggregations, and joins, that's transforming the data. So taking the data as it exists in the table and transforming it the way you need. We'll do lots of exercises on that. You can add, remove, and modify or update data. That's manipulating some of the data. Once it's in the table, you can update certain values. You can delete certain values or records out of it based on criteria. It allows you to manage and manipulate data. And then it extracts and stores data. So storage and retrieval. So it creates a kind of permanence to your data. So if you save it there, you can go back to it later. It's not just here 1 minute and gone another minute. So ways to extract the data out of systems and then be able to store it for future use. Okay, so how can you manage large amounts of data? So there are different types of databases. The key here is that we have a relational, it's like an Excel spreadsheet. In relational database lingo, you have tables. Tables are like your Excel spread or your Excel tab. It goes rows by columns or fields, which are across the top, and rows that are across the bottom. So they're kind of used interchangeably, fields and records, which are your columns and your rows. This is your table. Think of a database is like a container that's filled with these tables. It can be filled with more than just the tables. It can be other database objects too that we'll learn more about. I think of it as a database. It's like one of them that we'll use a lot in this class is a world database. So it has different world cities, world countries, and the languages that they speak. They contain all three of these tables inside of this database. It's like a big can. They show it like a big can because it's like a can that contains all of these different things within the database, particularly tables and data. And then schema. This is one of the few things that changes a little bit depending on your database. In MySql, schema and database are used interchangeably, but in other ones, schema is like how a table or database is organized or designed. So within Microsoft SQL Server, you'd have a database, and then you'd have schemas within a database. So you could have different tables that relate to each other in different ways within a database. In MySql, we'll use these two interchangeably. You just have a schema or a database and then a table. And then note in some of these, I have some notes, just like we're talking about at break, like just little notes about the current topic, like SQL came like 40 years ago. It's more convenient than Python as long as you've structured your data. It's designed only to handle data, so it's generally faster. But there's some things that I even personally do with Python for like automation purposes or extracting or bringing a bunch of Excel spreadsheets together or something like that. So it gives you the difference why we would use SQL or Python, and I do that throughout these lectures. Okay. So what is SQL? I keep saying SQL. It just becomes like an acronym you think of when you're in tech is long enough. So that's why we'll go through like define things and then go through some of the technical jargon. So at least you could speak it, or when somebody does, you know what they're talking about. So SQL is known, the long name is Structured Query Language. It is a standard programming language for relational database management and data manipulation. One of the things of why it's so popular is its relative simplicity as far as syntax is concerned. So being able to write a SQL query is generally easy. There's small things that you can do, like forget commas or things like that. But as far as programming languages go, it's very efficient and straightforward to do this when you have tables in a relational database and you're trying to bring them all together for analysis. So lots of different dialects. We talked about this at the very beginning. You could even put access into that. It's different dialects. A lot of them are all the same. They're all based on SQL. But you'll find some of these databases have different functions. Found that access wasn't able to calculate the median of a column, whereas Microsoft SQL Server and MySQL would have been able to do that. And then just little syntax differences between them, each one of these. Even like within that conversation, I said, how would I write this query in Microsoft Access? And then it would give you the code in Microsoft Access instead of MySQL. I wrote it in like a MySQL syntax and be like, convert this to access syntax, and it'll just generate the code for you. So query is a statement that asks for information from the database. So it gives you your different operations, your selects, what tables to get information from. even some operations like updating records, deleting, inserting new records into the tables. SQL can run locally on a server or in the cloud. My class, Cloud Engineering, we do this in the cloud. And this database that we're using in this class is actually in the cloud. You don't need to know that for this class, but the advanced class that we teach, we talk a lot more about data storage and retrieval and management within Microsoft Azure or cloud platform. I have like an advanced class for data engineers. But for this purpose, MySQL is running in the cloud, but it's not that important for it. And then simple and fast, only one data structure, and it's highly optimized for that tabular data structure. And very intuitive for humans to understand. Some of the advanced databases get complex on how data is stored, but in general, maybe it's like how much time I've spent in Excel. I just think of data in a tabular format and a bunch of rows or a different bunch of, instances or records that were captured.
Are regular expressions considered SQL or spin-off of SQL, or are they completely different things?
Each one of these dialects will have their own regular expressions. So what's your question is it considered part of SQL? Not really like default SQL. It's really like specific to the implementation of each one of these databases. It'll be just a little bit different. We'll see that we do regular expressions when we're cleaning data in this class. It's more of like some language that they've added to the database to be able to do regular expressions. So regular expression is like different character strings that you can use to like search or replace. Just informing the rest of the crowd or the class, regular expressions are like things that you can do to manipulate strings, like replace or find and stuff like that. They'll be a little bit different in between these because they have their own implementations of regular expressions within them. But there's some similarities there too. Not really a part, I wouldn't say it's really a part of the SQL.
You design them like formulas, so they're almost like a language within themselves.
Yeah, it's like a language that they include in the relational databases. All right, so query is a statement that asks for information from the database. Talked about it running locally or on a server, and simple and fast on the tabular data structures. Okay, so these are the different components that we'll cover in the class. Not so much data control or transaction control. These are really like database administration functions. So granting and revoking permissions to users is like the data control language. And transaction control is like really when you have a system that's doing like transactions very quickly and there's confusion about which ones come first, or like there's an error, so you need to roll back things. They include that. Maybe someday we'll teach a database administration class in ODSA, but for now, in this class, it's really the data definition language. So being able to modify data structures and define those in tables, and then data manipulation language is like clear, or is really like manipulating the data or selecting the data out of tables and transforming it into what you needed, the data that you need that's stored in those tables. So DDL mostly in the third, we'll see a lot of that in the third lecture when we're like inserting and deleting and updating values, where they even have some renaming or truncating. Truncating is like deleting all the records out of the table. We'll learn more about that. A lot of the class will be using data manipulation language to be able to select data, merge data, and so forth. Okay. So what is a database? We talked about that just 2 slides ago. It's a collection of information that's organized so it can be easily accessed, managed, and updated. So it's like that container that allows you to store that information, like tables and that organized structured data, so that you can manage it and access it at a later time. So the advantage is you can put a lot of security on it. You can do data integrity checks. You can do quite a bit of recovery, or persistence is what I talk about, as far as if you shut the server off and you turn it back on, the data's still there. So like you can go back to it later. And then being able to share tables, especially ported for analytics. If you were in like a data warehouse, to be able to use all the analysts to be able to use the same data to be able to do analysis. So they're doing like apples to apples comparisons. Disadvantage, they say learning curve. I don't think it's a huge learning curve. We're going to do it in 4 weeks. And I think at the end, you'll feel pretty good about it. So relatively, I mean, maybe more than Excel spreadsheet or something. Excel has a lot of its own that you could do a 4-week class on too. So say learning curve a little bit. It can be abstract if you're bringing a lot of different tables together in a system. We'll see this later on in the class. There can be a lot of maintenance and development costs to maintain a relational database system. So even in a data warehouse environment or for analytics, like it's never really done. You're always getting new data or new transactions or seeing new values that a system generates, and you're always doing some type of maintenance or optimization to it. That's why they have full-time IT staff to do these things. It's a full-time job. So we talked about what is a table. A table is any display of information in tabular form with rows and columns named. So that's the main data structure within relational database. And we talked about this, your columns or your fields. Those are name values that define the data within the table. So think of it as like maybe in the world database that we're going to look at, you have so in the world database, if you looked at the city table, maybe the columns in the city would be like city name, population density, of all sorts of different things. I'll actually show this to you. They're just a way to be able to, it didn't quite have as much as I said, but name values that define data within the table. So it defines for each record, they're all the names, they're the different countries that those cities are in, what districts and population. I think I was thinking of the country table. The country table has things like name and continent and region in the columns and surface area, the year of independence, population, life expectancies, and so forth. So it stores information, and the columns help define what's stored in the table from a column perspective. And the rows are single implicit structured data item in the table. So using that same example, each one of these rows is information about a country, and each one's a new country within it. It could be transactions within a system. That's often how I think of these. Or they could be observations. They could be job codes. They could be work orders. It really depends on the table that you're building, or what you define as the record. So in this, since you defined a world.country table, you defined each one of these rows as a country, and then the related information in the columns of the table. Make sense? Just making sure. I look up and just making sure everybody is still good with it. Helps to have people here in class too. Okay, so that's a table. Your common data types. So these are the ones that are a whole bunch of data types. Some of them can even be specific to a relational database, but you'll see these across pretty much, you will see these across all relational database systems, whether it's DB2 or Microsoft Access, Microsoft SQL Server. That's why I choose these, because you'll see all of these in those. SQL kind of has that set standard of these being in each one of those relational databases, with some of the relational database systems creating their own data types, but you'll see these across all of them. So with strings, you have character, you have a character data type. That's often when you have a field with a set number of characters. So for world table, this would be character 3. So you would write it like this. That would be your data type. So a character where everything in the table is 3 characters long. Now, variable character, varchar, that's where you could have strings of different lengths. So that'd be like your country, the names of your countries. They aren't all going to be the same length, because not all the countries have the same length of names. So what you would do, you would define that as something like, maybe it's the long, you do like the longest one in here. Maybe it's varchar, maybe it's 50 characters long. So that would capture everything that's 1 character and up to 50 characters long. So important to define these correctly too, because if you don't, and you were to put a new country in here that's longer than 50 characters, it would truncate it. It would only capture the first 50 characters. So designing these tables, we'll see, is an important consideration at some point, especially when you're creating tables to capture the data. You have different types of numerics. So you have integers. Integers are just your numbers, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, -1, 2, 3, 4, 5, your whole numbers. Your decimals, you can define these in different ways. Let's see if I have a good example of this. Like your surface area. Let's see if I click on this, if it'll tell me what the type is. So usually it's a number of characters and then the number of your significant digits after it. So this would be your total number of digits, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So it'd be like decimal 9,2. So 9 total digits, and then 2 significant digits at the end after the decimal point. So let's see what it gives us here. Oh, it says it's 10-2. It's a float 10-2. But similar ideas, the floating point's the same type of decimal, or is the same as decimal. Just how the database stores it is slightly different, but you'll see them used often interchangeably. There's probably another, since I said 9,2, there's probably one of these with 10 character or 10 digits. Like, yeah, Russia would be the biggest one with the largest surface area. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 digits. So that's why they said it was a 10,2. You have dates. So you have a regular date. There's a number of ways that you can format that, which we'll eventually see. Date times. So it's a combination of date and time. And then a timestamp. So timestamp is like in a really extended, like out to the millisecond is a timestamp. So it does like your date. Well, it doesn't actually do your date. It's just a time. Some database systems do it a little bit differently. Sometimes it's like the date since 1/1/1970, where it's a Unix timestamp. I've actually forgot which one it was with what it is with Microsoft, or I mean MySql. But the point is that it'll store like hours, minutes, seconds, milliseconds in some different time format specific to that relational database system. So you can get things down to like the millisecond. Often useful if you have huge transactional systems that are literally processing like thousands of transactions per minute or per second, even potentially. And then like what order they come in. So others are blob or Boolean. The blob is like a large binary object. I barely ever use that, but it's standard across database systems. Like in theory, you could store an image as just like a bunch of ones and zeros in a database and then retrieve it that way. That's mostly useful for programming. So if you're doing programming, you could retrieve an image for a database because you can't store the picture exactly in the database. It has to be like the 1 and 0 representation of it. And then you'd pull that into some program and then translate that, and then it turn into your image. And then you have Booleans. That's your ones and zeros, your truths and falses, your flags. Tend to be tiny integers, 1 of type 1 in Microsoft SQL. In MySql. I say Microsoft SQL, MySql. Yeah, with images, I almost prefer to not store them in the database, but I've seen it done. It can. Yeah, that's a consideration. Usually now you store them in some type of cloud drive or something, or cloud storage, and then you just load it up. Yeah. It's pretty much any program or application that can be translated to ones and zeros, which is pretty much everything on a computer. Like this PowerPoint or an application, it's all like ones and zeros underneath. If you're ever interested, that's what computer science is all about. That's like the root of it. All right, so what type of data can you use? Here's a more comprehensive list. Here's our numerics, our date times, different characters, strings you can use, Unicode characters and strings. So you can change it into a different type character format. That's mostly useful for programs also that need their strings stored in a specific like format. So like, you come across this all the time with data in a CSV file. Maybe one is stored as UTF-8, and then another one is like some other Unicode format. So text files tend to have different like storage formats, which is what this is for. I don't use nchar and nvarchar very much in these unless there's some application that like needs Unicode instead, that type of data representation instead. Binary, we talked about that, ones and zeros. And it could be one, it could be a 1 or 0, like a true false. It could be variable length. It could be an image, like we just talked about. And then you have miscellaneous, so more and more relational databases are storing semi-structured data like XML or JSON. Those different types of formats. You will learn more about those in your Python class, but becoming more and more flexible, especially now that there's all sorts of data that's being produced by systems, whether it's structured or semi-structured or unstructured data, which would be like text, trying to capture it all. Relational databases might not always be the best for it, but it does have the advantage that we talked about, that literally millions of IT professionals know how to use relational databases. So it's something that's a possibility for them instead of having to learn some new big data technology or some other type of database technology. Okay. So then what is a query? We're coming up near the end of the lecture. So a query is a request to the SQL database for data to answer a question. When we query database, we use a common language to get the information, SQL or structured query language. And it's in this format, specifically from top to bottom. So your select is the columns that you're selecting out of the table. So say the select star is like a short way to say select all of them. Maybe you just want to do select code, and name. And we'll do this in a little more of a format that we want to do it in this class, or we show it there. So if you do that, it'll just select the code and name from the world.country table. So that's a SQL query. As you saw in that one, it was a from, so I had to give it the table to pull data from. So the database and the data and the table. So I gave it both the database name and then the dot table name. And in Microsoft SQL, we also call this schema and then dot table name. Okay, and all the rest of these are optional, but I'll show you how they're used. So we have a where condition. Say we wanted to limit this to just one record. We wanted to find where code is equal to, we just want United Arab Emirates, and we know what that code is. The where clause is your limiting clause on the table. So I put those in double quotes. It just gives us out one record. You could also do something like an in ARE. So if the code is in that, if it's either one of those, return the value. So now it returns United Arab Emirates and then United States. There are a bunch of different ways you can do the where clauses, which we'll look at throughout the class. Then if you have a group by, you can group by a column. Anytime you do a summary on a table, you have to do a group by, but only if you're doing a summary. Say, I want the population for each country in the world. So we do the city table. So say for each country, we'll do each country code. Sum of population. From world.city. And then we need a group by your country code. So, okay. So we use this group by to say by each one of these countries, like Afghanistan, summarize the population. So it's going to do that for this one. And then for Netherlands, it's going to do all of these right here. So it's going to group this. It's going to give us one Netherlands and then the sum of all those. Let's go ahead and run it. So we have Afghanistan, and you see that how it's returning them. Also, this would say summing over all the cities in Spain in your country code. All right, we have a having clause. So a having, you could do, having is after you have done a group by, and it's a limiting condition on your groups. So we'll say we wanted all of these countries that have a population of less than, this is kind of, I don't even, Falkland Islands, say where having some population less than 2,000. So let's see if there are any other countries that have less than 2,000. Then it actually has each one. It has like how many of these 12? Because you can see down in the output when you're in a query, it'll say how many records were returned. So that actually in this table, it had 12 of those countries, population less than 2,000. You can order by the results, so you can order by the name of the country, or you could even order by. Let's bring this back up. This is already in alphabetical order, just the way it is in the table. Order by some population descending. So it'll order by the sum of the population, and it's going to do it in descending order. That's what this command says. So you can see now these populations are in descending order. Limit would be, so if you only wanted to return 2 of these records for whatever reason, do limit 2. Then it only return the first 2. This is useful. I use this sometimes when the table's huge and I just wanted to give me the first 100 instead of taking 10 minutes to load the entire table. It take just fractions of a second to load me the top 100 records. I just say, I want to see like what data is in this table and what it looks like. So that is it. Right there, I'll even put that one in Slack that covers each one of the query clauses. And that's a query language there. So that's a way to be able to extract and transform data out of this larger table the way you need, because this is how the data, say in country, this is how the data exists, and your query here, which one were we using? And your query here is being specific from what you want out of the world.country table. So you can limit it in certain ways just to bring the information back that you want, or even summarize it like we did in the other query. Okay, so query sequence, this is how the database interprets it. So this is a little bit important to know, so you know how the database is working and how it returns the information that you're getting in your IDE or your MySql, in this class, MySql Workbench. So you have the from, so it selects your table first, and then where, the second part, it limits the number of records, so keep all the columns, but it'll limit the records. And then you have your group by and having. So it'll do your summation. And then you select the columns. And then you can order by the values in those columns. You can even order by the values, like 2 columns, like 1 column first and another 1 column second. And then you get your final results. I think this is just important to note because it'll help you think about, like I just said, how the database gets it and how you could write a query for it. Gets the data and how it processes. So even think about, even though you have to have it in this order from top to bottom, think of it as like, I want to get data from this first. I only want to get these records, and then what type of summation or columns do I want to do? And then how do I want to order the final result? So here's an example of the world query. I want to wait on this until we get set up with we're going to get set up in the last 30 minutes. But here's one that you could get. So think of it as doing the from first. I want world.country, where the continent is just equal to Asia. So we're getting all the countries in Asia. We don't have any group by or having. So we're selecting just the columns we want. And then we want to order it by continent and then country descending. So this is going like reverse alphabetical order. And then I just want the top 10. So it returns 10 in reverse alphabetical order. Now you say, why would you want to do that? And I'd say, I don't know. It just shows you it just shows you one of the ways that's possible of doing it. So you could imagine if somebody's asking for certain information, how you could write a query in different ways to be able to manipulate the data and get it the way you need it to be, especially if you're using like a sum or something like that. Right. Where can you learn SQL? It's still relevant in certain ways because you have different courses you could still take. Those are always valuable. I guess you're taking ODSA course, but online resources can be good too. I like Udemy classes for learning, especially if you're learning something for the first time. Have you heard of it? No. UDEMY. Now though, I can jump into things like way faster with AI, with like Claude.ai. Like I can barely know anything and just jump into something. It always helps though to have like some domain context, right? Or be able to understand the basics. I still take all sorts of classes on this thing when I need to learn something new. I recently did one on WordPress to build websites. Data Camp is really good for learning data. Did I have that in here? Maybe not in the database for it, but anything related to data science, Data Camp is good. I started a class on Data Camp recently on AI, but I didn't do anything with it. It's more of ambition than anything. Documentation and help. Less and less relevant now that you can look everything up because all of this is indexed. Stack Overflow, I think, can still be used. I still use Stack Overflow, especially if I'm like getting an error and AI is not doing a good job of explaining it. I'll go to Stack Overflow, and then experts will explain it there. So if you type in, if anybody's been to Stack Overflow.
Yep.
This is like one of the best resources ever. Like experts just go and answer certain things, right? Get a whole record as a string. I do that sometimes with functions, and even in Excel now I'm like, how do I do this? And AI is not giving me a very good answer. And sometimes they have different ideas on how to do it or different approaches too. That's why AI is so powerful. It's indexed all of this, but it doesn't always give the best answer. I still go to Stack Overflow sometimes. I used to more, but I still do. These interactive tutorials are really good. I recommend W3 Schools. It's like just like pure SQL syntax, learning the SQL language. And then I've listed a bunch of different ones, even more about database performance, but W3 Schools.
Up to what level can you teach yourself SQL? It's pretty good. Can you get advanced? Like if you kept going after this class, just with simple tutorials and stuff, like where would we start getting diminishing returns without advanced instructors?
I think once you know everything in here, it's just you could learn everything else within the relational database. Yeah, it's just practice and using AI. Like sometimes I just forget things, like you haven't used it in years or something like that, or a week, and then I forget it already. But it has all of our different SQL clauses in here, like select, and then they have guided examples from like a customers table, and pretty much the most standard form of SQL possible. Straightforward and not database specific. Like you can do ands and the where clauses and stuff like that. Highly recommend this one. Like resources like this, I just feel are really good. And even this one has other programming languages. So if you do Python,
What's that called?
W3 Schools, you can learn all about the different Python data types, loops, lambda functions, some of the different packages, how to use them, like most common packages, especially for data. I'd recommend it for any class that you take here, especially development, where in Python, you'll use libraries like NumPy or Pandas to manipulate data. So you can do data manipulation in Python too. What else do we have in there? I hardly ever go to books anymore, although I'm old school and crack one open for nostalgia sometimes. The videos now are awesome. I'll have like learn SQL in 3 hours or 5 hours or whatever. That can be a good resource. I sometimes use it for like a quick introduction into things, like quick videos, like learn the basics of WordPress, coding, advanced coding in 10 minutes. Like it gives me like a good overview. Now at the end, I'm like, oh, what did I just learn? But it gives me like a good start. There's a game there in Sandbox, so you could create your own. You could play around with SQL syntax and you don't have to worry about it too much, although it doesn't look like that link works anymore. SQL Fiddle still work. Yep. SQL compiler that lets you write, edit, and execute. SQL Server, any SQL query, and you can choose like MySql or SQL Server or Oracle. You can pick the different flavors. I don't know where they have the schema for this. Insert into product. And then you don't have to worry about breaking anything either. I haven't used this one in a little while, but they must have like a table schema here somewhere. All right. Practice resources, more of the same. And then SQL coding standards. So I've been asked this in the class before, like with Python. I forgot the name of it, but it's like very, very specific coding standard. There's not really one in SQL that much. However, in this class, when I create code here, I try to use the best practice. So like keywords in uppercase, field names or tables in lowercase. What else do we have? Instead of combining names like office, locations. We're doing one as a lowercase and one uppercase. We try to use underscores as much as possible. Keywords, you case them in brackets or parentheses. And then you try to put these all on separate lines. So this is a case state. This is a one clause select from where, and even some of the keywords on there, and just for readability purposes. So there's not really one specific, but we'll try to keep it consistent in the class. One of the things it does is it makes the code more readable instead of having it different in a bunch of different places. All right. So that is it for this lecture. I'll give everyone a quick 5 minutes because that's a lot, but I want to try to get us started with getting MySQL Workbench installed and getting connected. So if everybody can, during this 5 minutes, it'd be a good time to download MySQL Workbench.
I have a quick question.
Yep.
Is that all right if I just use SQL, like Microsoft SQL?
Oh, the problem is that you won't be able to connect to the MySQL database with that IDE.
Okay. Do you have the data? Is that the database that we're going to be using?
Yeah, we're using a MySQL database. So
I believe. I think I'll be able to convert it possibly.
you can give it a try.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised. One thing that you can also do is if forgot the name, the management studio for Microsoft. If that doesn't work for you, you could use Azure Data Studio.
Oh, okay. Like blobs, like the one with blob storage. Is that
Yeah.
okay. Okay.
I thought about using that for the class, but I just stuck to using MySQL Workbench.
Okay.
And it gives you.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Or there's other software that you could download to, whatever your preferred software is.
Yeah.
So
I have
if you do get it,
I believe I'd be able to convert it. I have converted this before, just maybe using like online resources. Sorry.
if you do, let me know.
Okay.
Let me know how you do it.
All right. So where's the database located? Are you gonna send them over?
So I have the server names here. Here I have some instructions for everyone to follow. So I'll paste that in there first. I did at the beginning of the class. So the files that I dropped.
Oh, okay.
There's a MySQL install.
Okay.
And this has the instructions, but I'll also copy and paste this out of here. And I'll walk everyone through this. But if you need a quick break, feel free. I would start to download. I would start this download first because it may take you a couple minutes. So the first step is to install. We don't need the database server. This might be the wrong file. Hold on one second. Yeah, I pasted the wrong one in here. Follow these directions. The last one that I pasted, they're simplified. And then all we need is MySQL Workbench. We don't need to install the entire server. So these instructions here that say DMM /SQL101, you can click on MySQL Workbench. You can select your operating system. So if you have Windows, you can do that, Linux or Mac OS. I'm a creature of Windows itself. You would download. You can do that for whatever computer you have. if you've been in the past had somebody have a Linux computer. That's the advantage of Workbench, is that you can do it on multiple operating systems. So Microsoft Windows, I would download it. You could say no thanks, start my download. And then it will give you an executable. It's not a super big file, so it shouldn't take too long.
So was it the first button or the second button? The Windows MySql installer or?
Hold on.
Yes.
Yeah, so refer going back to this one. So if you click that link, it should take you to the MySQL Workbench and say 8.0.41 there. You'll want to select operating system for whatever type of computer you're using. If it's Windows, Mac OS. Yeah. And then you first select operating system.
Seems like login or sign up.
You can skip that. So if you click on this, any one of these, you can say no thanks, just start my download. You can sign up if you want, emails from Oracle, but
Version for Mac is 9.2, which as long as we get the latest, we're good, right?
yeah. Yeah, latest will be, this is the latest. There shouldn't be much difference, or not for this class. Once you get that, you'd install the executable. Mine gives me modify, repair, or remove because I've already done it. You can just do a full installation, the default settings. And then you complete the wizard. And then you should have MySQL Workbench available. After you do that, you'll see a screen like this. I'll wait a second for everybody to get there.
Yeah, I need to go for my data, so I need to do it. I would have needed to know.
There's always one of those.
Yep.
No, they're using like their work computer, and then
Yep.
they have to give you administrator to install it. They shouldn't have a problem with it though. Otherwise, have them talk to me.
I have the same screen you have, so we're good.
Okay. All right. So when we're at the screen, you won't see a connection here. But with MySQL connections, you can hit the plus button. So I have some instructions here on what to add into each one of those. So you can set the connection name to Azure MySQL ODSA. So we're connecting to that, setting the connection name. We have an Azure cloud database. We have this host name. That's the internet location or the URL for your server. So it's this odsa.mysql.database.azure.com. So what you would do, you would put that in the host name. So just for this purpose, I'm going to put ODSA2. Your username will be your first initial and last name. If you have two parts to your last name, it'd be both parts of your last name. So if my last name was Bergman Cabrera, BJ Bergman Cabrera. Sounds like a cool name. Like I got married and just tacked it on to the end.
So you took on your wife's name?
Then just put it on the end of it instead of not even a hyphen. No, I didn't know. If I was J. Bergman Cabrera.
Should we put our own username password?
Yes. Yeah, your own. So your first initial and then last name. And then if you have two parts, it's both parts like that combined.
Click store and hold.
Yep. So now you can do your username and password. So your password, everyone has the same one. I'm just going to drop it in here. It is, hopefully I remember it. Welcome. I actually don't remember it. I think this is it. I'm like, you better write that down. Oh, but that's not my password. That I put in there, give that a try. Welcome SQL 101 with exclamation point at the end. Capital W. All the letters of SQL capitalized 101. Exclamation point. And I missed one message here from someone. Oh yeah, that's was saying that she'd restart her computer. If that works, you can also enter that password here. Because when you do it, you'll end up at this screen. You'll see administration, and then if you click schemas, you won't see everybody's schema.
So just click OK.
Yeah.
Should we put anything in default schema?
No. No, it's not that big a deal. You won't see everybody else's names, but what you should see is the world schema. You should see the Sequila schema, and then you should see your schema or database with your initial and last name. Did that password work?
And so then on MySql Workbench, don't know that.
Yeah, so back here, once you have that connection set, you click on it, it says opening SQL editor. It'll give you an error message if the password's wrong. That must have been the password. Good. Okay, and this is where we're going to run our first query. So
So when did it look like that? So he didn't actually
Hold
send
on one
the
second.
password online for people.
I did put it in Slack.
Somebody's asking what's the password.
Or someone's
It didn't
asking.
get sent.
Oh, I didn't. Okay. I must have put that somewhere else. Okay. Keep getting server, not Workbench. Okay.
I didn't do Hello World SQL code.
Yeah, you can do that one, or you can also, from the lecture, copy and paste that query that we had in there. But you'll know if it works if it returns some results. And how you do that is you write your query in here. You can I'll just do one. Select star is just a short way to do all columns from world dot city. And to execute it, there are these two buttons up here. The first one is if you highlight it'll just execute whatever's highlighted. The other one executes from wherever your cursor's at. So if you had we'll see where we have longer scripts with multiple queries, they'll just execute from there. So there are two different executes. You could do either one. Let me take a look at let's see what you have. That's why it's good to be in person. Oh, instead it opens up in administration, but go over to schema. Schemas are where your databases are at. Yep.
That's your email?
Yep. And now you could hit that one with the plus sign and SQL. And then then you could write the code that the hello world code.
You have a more used Workbench?
Is mine different?
Yours looks different because you have a more used Workbench.
Let's see real quick how it looks different. It does have the result grid because I already
You
executed
have all
it.
those things on the computer. I'm just doing this.
Yep, it's because I've set up the rest of the class. So all you should see is your schema. You won't see the rest of the classes. Your schema that I set up is like a database for you to work in this class. And you can do whatever you want there, especially like related to project as you're doing that. You should see the world schema. I've given you access to query that. You should see Sequila.
Do you have to like purposefully like make it higher uppercase when you do it? Doesn't you have to like do
Uppercase?
Yeah.
Oh, like the select or the from?
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be in uppercase, but
Okay.
we're going to put all those keywords in uppercase for our class. It's like the standard that we're talking about to make the code easier to read. So you could do it all in lowercase.
Okay.
Yeah. It doesn't matter, but for this class, we'll do it all. So it's all consistent and readable. We'll do it all. Like,
Installs it on the Mac and then the program disappears.
I brought a MacBook just in case. I have a MacBook too. We troubleshoot. And then if you want, you could take this query. Sometimes it doesn't copy and paste perfectly out of the PowerPoint slides. And give it a try. I also have a file for all the class exercises, the slides and class exercises that you can run. I'll give that to everyone the next class. So I copied and pasted this one out of the slide. We'll just go ahead and run that as is. And then it gives me that result that I see on that slide. Like I said, I have one file for that I'll give everyone for the next class as I'm going through this. You can have it pulled up in MySql Workbench and run it. And then
What do you do with the results? Like what do you do with this? Do you run the query and you see it? You see like an Excel spreadsheet.
you could do a couple things. Sometimes I just copy everything and put it in an Excel sheet. I'm like writing a query and I want to do my own analysis. You can export. There's an export option. You can export it in a few different formats. You can only do CSV here. Well, you can do Excel spreadsheet too. How do you export it? There's that export button right here on the result grid. Sometimes if I have a big data set, I'll export it to CSV and then read it into something else. Oh, right here. I was pointing to the wrong one. Export. If it's a big file, I do it in CSV. CSV is pretty standard format for Python or Tableau or whatever to read. I might export it to CSV and import it into Tableau or Power BI. Or if I have a running data set, like for my client, it's like 2 million records and they don't have a database. So I store it all in like a running CSV file. Not in this class. Everything here will be in a database table. I couldn't give them a database table because they don't have a database for me to put data into. Plus, if you don't have anybody to administer it or take care of it, then it's not really a solution. So I just do it in a running file for them that they. And I do that in Python that way because they can just run Python for free. The clients that I gave it to.
Okay, so this is data that.
Sorry, I'm confusing you. Go ahead.
Yeah, this is data that was queried, and
Yep.
now it's just like the question of what to do with it. And what can you do with it with Python?
With Python, you can do the same thing. It's just different than SQL. SQL, the advantage of SQL is the things that we were talking about. So if you have it in a relational database in a table, it's like a very straightforward way of getting your data. Plus, it's made specifically for tabular data. So instead of writing a big Python routine to do the same thing, you can just write this in SQL instead, since it's already stored and managed in a database, relational database table. There are a lot of advantages to that.
So this is like a query. We have the data, and then we're just writing SQL query.
Yeah.
It's like a search and find. I have all these data, but I only want to find like this one Excel and all that.
Yep.
That
So think about
card, and then in that card, then I can export it. I can use that data to do
Yep.
analysis. Instead of looking at 2 million data, I can use like just a little bit.
Yep. So think about this as it's kind of like almost natural language. Like if you're answering a question, like, then you just are like telling it, I want the continent and the name of the countries from the world.country table only in the continent of Asia, and then sort them by this and give me the top 10.
Would you ever like export it and like just make several Excel or CSV files for the client so that they know what each
Yeah.
query is?
Yeah.
I gotta go, but I'll be online the next 2 weeks.
Okay. No problem.
And I'll be back to the 30.
I didn't even give a chance to give snacks to everyone.
Oh, we know.
And I meant to, there's another class upstairs, and I think I stole all their snacks. I was going to get it up to them. That just reminded me. I was having fun, I guess.
Well, it's over. It's over to you.
Yeah, what have you got? Is anybody else online? Everybody getting it, or you have any questions? I'll stay until we get this set up for everyone.
Hi, it's Nancy here. I need my username and password.
Oops.
I
Okay.
found the password, but what username do I use?
The username is your first initial and then your last name. So it should be, for you, it should be N Drinkard.
Okay.
And then the password is Welcome SQL101. What that's down there at the bottom of the SQL101 channel. There you go.
Just X
out of it, and it's not like disappearing as an icon on my data, on my home screen, it's because we have to go to that website every time.
Oop, let me see real quick, sorry.
Oh, you're good.
Oh, you X'd out of
Yeah,
SQL Workbench?
Yeah, and everything, I just, yeah, I just don't know, like, where it's in, like,
I just do it here and type it in my SQL.
and then I can.
Yeah, you can pin it if you want to do that. Yeah.
So I downloaded it twice, and another one, I went to applications. Couldn't see it, this is application, so I searched this back. And so, SQL doesn't explain, please open up somewhere. You have a MySql install.
Oh, was yours the server? Did you do the server version, it looks like?
Did I accidentally grab the server version?
Yeah, I pasted that first by accident. Try the second link where it's just MySql Workbench. Because it looks like it wants you to configure a server. That's my fault for posting that one first, posting the wrong one first.
And when I come to this every time, like, how do it, it just says the world is in there?
Yeah.
Okay, so it's just, it's already pre-configured that is the world data.
Yep. So that's the advantage of relational database is that even if you exit out of it, it still persists in the database. So anytime you go back.
That's for the purpose of the presentation. This is all configured for the world, so we can. Okay.
The majority of our examples in class will be from that world database because it's a simple database to
And it's pre, like.
populate it, yeah.
It's also,
Like dog.
it's interesting to use.
It's intuitive too. I don't want it to be.
Yeah.
The homework assignment uses Tequila, which is like a video rental store. It's more complicated, but that's the intent. Is that it's a little more challenging and spend more time on it. How's that one coming along?
I just need to know which instance, because I grabbed the first one.
Can I see up at the top real quick? Select version. That's still community server though. Hold on. There's this other link.
Oh, this the one that says Workbench? There we go.
Yeah.
Now I'm cooking it for
Yeah, the one down there that's DMM forward slash
That's
SQL
what
101.
Windows do.
Oops, Elizabeth. Sorry, did I never invite you to the... Huh? Elizabeth. Private chat.
just wanted to learn databases. I didn't know. I have no idea, you know. I have like a lot of experience, like peripherally, so that's why I kind of know it, but I've never really done
I forgot, what did you say that your role is? It's
it.
you're doing grant writing at nonprofit?
I was doing grant writing, doing database, programs where we needed a database. So kind of that, mainly in the nonprofit world.
Yeah, did you enter any data into it? Like,
I've entered data, I've run queries, I've done exports and imports, CSV files, done like the data, and I'm like reports.
Probably have
Reports
some
and dashboards.
like application, like front end and not the database.
Razor's Edge.
Oh, you were telling me about that, yeah.
Razor's Edge. It's very popular nonprofit software.
Well, the good thing is, since you know that system,
Yeah.
is that it should make understanding the underlying data and database that much easier for you. Well, you'll start to look at the data and you'll be like, oh yeah, I entered that, or that's how that works, and
Yeah.
be able to put it together.
I really want to do that.
That's awesome.
I was always telling my organization that we needed a database for computer experience that way, like people, they don't have the funds to maintain a database. So they would have a spreadsheet called.
Yeah, usually it starts with a big spreadsheet.
Yeah. So, cool. I'm really looking forward to it. I didn't realize that this was, it sounds so scary. SQL is really scary.
Here, Liz, can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can.
Okay, I'll help you here in a second. I got one question about where do you see the database. So, Nancy, here you go. So, with one of the other students, she saw this administration first, and all of this is blank. If you click on schemas in MySql Workbench, you should see the databases or the schemas. You won't see all of these, but you should see the one with NDrinkard, and then the world Sequila database and crypto database. Do you see that?
Correct. I do see that.
Okay. So you're asking next, how do you run a query?
No, I couldn't even get that far because I was on the administration chat tab. So I think I'm good now.
Okay. Yeah, you
Thank
can run a query by, I didn't say this one, but you can create a new query on this tab. And then you could run your code there. And then when you do, you can use these buttons like lightning bolts to execute it.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Liz, how can I help get you up and running?
I really don't know. So I downloaded it, and the instructions with the select custom and include all of those, I couldn't find them all. So then I uninstalled and reinstalled, and I think I made it worse.
Actually, so I accidentally pasted the wrong version of the instructions first. There's a second version of the instructions under there.
Yes.
This one right here, the DMM SQL101. Give this one a try. It's much simplified, and it only installs MySql Workbench.
Okay.
Right, this one installed the whole server with a bunch of options, but I moved away from that one. This is an older version of it.
Okay, so I did that,
I'm
and
actually going
then
to
connect to my SQL database.
to avoid confusion. So if you downloaded that successfully, you should see this. You won't see the connections there. It'll be blank, but it looks like a screen like this.
Okay, I just X'd out. Hold on. Okay, yes. With
Okay.
just the local instance. I think
Nope,
that's
you'll want to set one up.
okay.
So you'll hit this plus. And then from there, enter this information that's right here.
Okay, that is the part I'm missing.
Your username will be your first initial and then last name.
Okay.
And then the password is the welcome SQL 101 with the exclamation point.
Name.
Which key looking to select?
What's that?
Okay.
So it should look like
This one.
it should look something like that.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right there. So you could write a new query and put it there and then hit the lightning bolt.
And then the
Just
password.
select anything from.
Yeah. You could take that, select. Sorry, I'm hoping someone here in class.
Oh yeah, I can hear him. You're fine.
Okay. Yeah, so this is what it'd look like. And then you could store your that password here, the welcome SQL 101 with exclamation point.
Okay.
And you could test connection. It should say good.
Okay. Keeps telling me password is not working. Copy. Yeah. Keeps telling me the password's not right.
Let me change your password real quick.
Oh, it's working now.
Okay.
It just needed a minute, apparently.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So then if you have it all set up, you can click that button and put that password in.
Okay.
So when you're there, they'll start you on this administration tab.
Uh-huh.
But if you go over to schemas, you should see your
Yeah,
schema.
So I have
Ebola.
yeah, crypto, Ebola, Sequila, and World.
Yep, that's what you should see.
Okay.
And then you won't see anything here, but you can create a new query if you press that button.
Okay.
And then you can copy and paste this example query in here.
Oops.
Select star from world.city, or you can get this one from the lecture and run that too. And then the lightning bolt runs the query.
Okay.
If that works, you're a SQL professional or got on your way.
It looks like it worked, so I think I'm good.
Sweet.
Awesome. Thank you.
All right. Yep. See you Wednesday.
All right. Have a good night.
Yep, you too.
Bye.
Good. Got it?
Yep. Thank you.
It actually went a lot better than it did most of the time, the first 6 times. Got a setup where it wasn't a nightmare to set it up on everyone's system.
Oh, does that happen once in a while?
Yeah, for a while we were installing our own databases on each one of these and then loading each database, but there are a lot of problems between people having Macs and PCs, and somebody had Linux once, and then somebody couldn't install Workbench because their computer was too old. Or server because their computer is too old. Michael, if I have Nate give you one or something. I feel like, yeah, that would be the only other thing is if we either had like a lab with computers, that would be awesome. Told Nate about that. They have a desk upstairs. Have to try to convince him of that.
They're doing machine learning, right?
Yeah.
It's like a class split and stuff.
Yeah. It'd be awesome if you either had just a laptop that everybody just used for class or something, checked it out, and you just loaded it with everything.
Preloaded, yeah. I think once we get going.
That's not too bad, though. I've had more set up for classes that I've taken. That's about as good as that. That's about as good as I can get it without giving everyone like a virtual machine or something. I could do that, but
I thought it was pretty painless.
not bad.
No. Well, thank you. See you
Yeah,
later.
general introduction here. It's that gets a little bit tougher, but it'll be good.
I thought it was pretty good.
Yeah. No, yeah, the course material gets harder pretty fast.
Yeah.
You'll be all right.
Oh, yeah.
All right. See you Wednesday. Nice to meet you. No. Yeah. See you later. All right. All right, we'll close this out. That is it for tonight's lecture, the introduction to data manipulation and SQL basics. The second class, we will start working on queries. We'll pull that up and give some of the topics. The focus will be writing queries. We'll review the class 1 basics and the objectives in class 2. Practice using those common clauses we learned, learning logical statements and operators, so things that belong in the where class, common aggregations and SQL functions like summations and averages, and many others. We'll practice using comments and then practice using SQL examples in MySql Workbench. So now each one of these classes will start to have examples that we work on. That is it for today. Jeremy Bergman for Omaha Data Science Academy. See you Wednesday.